Welcome to this wonderful community we have at Newberry. First of all, let me say hello to everyone. We are excited and glad that you are here to join us. But otherwise than that, Miss Jackie Johnson, can y'all give her a hand, please, as she comes? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shepard, and to all your staff for your hospitality and helping us get everything set up today. As Mr. Shepard said, my name is Jackie Johnson. I am the Director of Communications for Alachua County Public Schools, and I'm very happy to welcome you to tonight's community input session. I want to introduce the school board members who are here to listen to you tonight. Our board chair, Tina Certain, had a conflict tonight, so she's not able to make it. She's involved with the Florida School Boards Association. They're having an event, and she is the president of that group, so of course she is there. So leading tonight's meeting will be Dr. Leonetta McNeely, the board's vice chair. We also have our board members Kay Abbott, Diane McGraw, and Dr. Sarah Rockwell. We are looking forward to sharing with you some information about comprehensive rezoning here in Alachua County Public Schools. It's certainly long overdue. Our Chief of Equity, Inclusion, and Community Relations will be here very shortly to make a presentation, but in the interim, I want to give you just some idea of how this meeting is going to go down. Dr. Edwards will be giving a quick presentation about rezoning in general. Before she begins, I'm going to walk you through the interactive map that we have available on our website so you can see how that works and how you can use it to best advantage. After we are done with the presentation, when I give the signal, anybody who is interested in speaking to the board can just line up behind the microphone. You'll have 3 minutes with the board. You can see there's a timer there on the table. I'll be keeping time, and it will mark time backwards, so you'll be able to see how much time you have left. After we do that, we do have a few questions for you to get your input about rezoning in general. So if you wouldn't mind filling that out anytime, and then at the end of the meeting, after all the comments, we can share with you what the results were. We can get the instant results from that survey. If you have input on rezoning, but you would prefer not to speak tonight, that is absolutely fine. You've got a couple of options. There is an input form that's available on the table as you were coming in. You can fill that out and then leave it at the table as you leave. We also have a special email box set up for rezoning, and you can send your input in that way. That is also fine. I do want to let you know that these are proposed plans, and I want to stress that. The maps you're going to see, the charts with the demographics that you got as you came in, those are all proposed numbers. Nothing has been finalized, and nothing will be finalized until the board votes on December 5th. And in the meantime, there are other opportunities for citizen input, both at this community input session, 2 more community input sessions we have next week, and then there are several board meetings and workshops that will also include opportunities for citizen input on this plan. This particular input session and all of them are being videotaped, and we will be posting that video in a few days on our rezoning website, and I'll have more information about that rezoning website in just a little bit. So at this time, I'd like to take the opportunity to walk you through the interactive map that we have on our website. It has more detail, and I think you'll find it more user-friendly than just the static maps we were able to provide you on paper as you came in. So if you go onto our main website, which is sbac.edu, you see there's a little rezoning tab here in red. We also have a larger box here that allows you to access the rezoning page. So let's go to the main rezoning page. There are a lot of links on here that you will probably find very useful. The frequently asked questions page, the proposed new zone map. It has both the static and the interactive maps, demographic data, and as we update all of that, that gets updated on this website as well. So in fact, just today we had some updates to the maps and to the demographic data. What you're seeing is the new stuff. We have the calendar of upcoming meetings that are related to zoning. We have videos of past meetings and some other information that you might find useful. But let's focus right now on the proposed new zone maps. You've got 2 options. You can look at the static maps, which is basically what you have in your hand on paper, or you can go to the interactive map. And this allows you to do a couple of things. First, what you can do is type in an address. So just for fun, I'm going to go ahead and type in the district's office address. That red tab shows you where the district office is located, and obviously you can zoom in and out. And obviously, as you see, when you zoom in, you see a lot more detail than you would on a static map. And you see you have a choice to look at the elementary, the middle, and the high schools. The eye, it's an actual, eyeball there, tells you that you are actually able to look at that one. You can see if a line is through it, you're not looking at the middle school. So right now we're looking at the elementary school. You can see that the proposed zone, the current elementary zone for that address is Metcalf Elementary. And it's shown with these dark outlines right here. The proposed elementary school zone is also Metcalf. The Metcalf color is pink. So what you can see is that these two sections are the current zones for that school, but on their proposed plan, it's everything here that's in pink. And then you can do the same thing. You can get out of the elementary school and go to middle school. So let's cross those out. Cross out elementary school, go to middle school, and you will see the same thing. You can see the current zone for the district office, which is actually Westwood. And then you can see the proposed zone. It's this section here is now the proposed zone for Bishop. So you can see that all this sort of purpley area here is the proposed zone. So current zone, proposed zone. And you can do that for any address in the district. If you have any questions at all of the instructions are located over here. If you click the I button in this corner, that's for information, and it will give you the instructions for how to use this map. And it is available in Spanish too. We do have that option on our website. Dr. Edwards, come on up. Dr. Edwards is our Chief of Equity, Inclusion, and Community Relations, and she has been leading the rezoning effort here at the district. So I'm going to ask her to take over.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Good evening to everyone. As Ms. Johnson said, we are working, of course, on our Alachua County Public Schools rezoning process, and I believe that she probably has shared that the maps were updated today, this afternoon, and so a little bit different if you happen to have been at the presentation earlier in terms of one, the schools that we'll look at that are most aligned to this particular area in terms of samples, but also the data has changed a little bit. And so our agenda for this evening as it relates to our rezoning process, we'll go through our objectives, a quick review of Policy 5120 and the constraints used for our methodology, the data collection process that we have been following, as well as our current school enrollment. And then, as I said, we'll look at a few of the sample schools. Today, I believe there are 4 for this area for data considerations, demographic analysis, and then the rationale behind the demographics that we're looking at and the process that we've been following along the way. We'll talk a little bit about considerations, and then you have already had an opportunity to see how the community input portion actually goes. Our objectives, as we know, are to establish the geographic lines for schools within Alachua County Public Schools. In doing so, we want to align our student capacity with student enrollment and prioritize our fiscal responsibility and efficiency. So that means that we are looking at the enrollment for each of our schools, what is the actual overall capacity for that school, and then what percentage of students are actually attending the school, as well as when we're looking at the fiscal responsibility, the cost for facilities, transportation, and personnel at each of our schools across the district. Policy 5120 more or less outlines the process that we need to follow. It is the actual board policy that governs rezoning process. It's shared here that the superintendent will periodically review our school enrollment and recommend to the board changes in district school zones. That is something that typically happens after we've had new construction or we're looking at some variation between schools in terms of enrollment in the population. So within that same policy, there are several justifications that the board may use to make changes, and that's our financial and administrative efficiency, school capacity and grade level capacity, the convenience of access to our schools, how safe and efficient the transportation and travel is for our students, effective and appropriate instructional programs at our various schools, the socioeconomic diversity in enrollment, as well as what the impact is on our existing school facilities. And then finally, for policy 5120, the policy outlines that the superintendent can recommend that the board adopt enrollment caps for schools within the district. We are making sure as we move forward in our presentations, and some of you, I can just tell by faces that I see that are familiar to me, may have been here when we had our initial presentations, but we want to make sure that the language is clear around the policy. We have talked about in the past 90 to 100% being over capacity, and 90% we are typically looking at our school zoning and choice for students, but the policy clearly outlines that at that 90 to 100%, it is considered crowded, not over capacity. Above 100% would be over capacity, right? The 100% is full. Anything above that would be considered over capacity. So we look at that 90% mark as the mark for denoting it's crowded. And a crowded school does have impacts. And so we do want to share with our public and community members the considerations that we have as we've been moving forward in the zoning process. We've been looking at transportation challenges. Where are students living in proximity to schools? Are they within the 2-mile walk zone where transportation for a bus may not be necessary? What are the safe bus routes? And can we shorten the length of bus rides for students? Our school capacity, we're looking at the permanent capacity in our brick and mortar buildings, as well as a few things as we've gone through this process that have arisen in terms of us looking at is not only the cost of portables, but could we shift the use of portables by making changes on things such as computer labs. So for instance, we're standing in Newberry High School. There are 3 hardwire labs, and if in those labs we were able to remove the labs and this school became a one-on-one, or we had computers that were portable and laptop carts, then perhaps the students who are in classes in the portables can move into a space that could then be transitioned into a classroom, and they could move into the building, and we would also potentially save money on that portable, depending on whether the portable is owned or leased. It also changes the educational experience for the students in terms of the transitions, being closer proximity to peers, so on and so forth. So those are all things that we've been looking at, as well as our magnet program enrollment, where they are located, how many students are enrolled, looking at where there may be magnet programs at schools that could be over capacity, and whether we are admitting students into those programs at a rate that seems to be appropriate. So for instance, if we have enrollment into a 9th grade high school program with 150 students, but that school is over capacity, perhaps we need to start allowing or minimizing by allowing 100 students in each year versus 150. And so we're looking at those things and the parameters of our zoning exemptions and where they have been allowable throughout the district. So as we look at various challenges in transportation, I've described those, but the budgetary considerations for that is how much is it costing us to transport students from point A to point B. Currently, our operational expenses for transportation for our bus usage, gas mileage, our maintenance, our drivers is at $11,800,000. And so a comparison of costs would be whether we could decrease that amount as we move forward. And so we're working with the various departments to get that. You'll find that as we talk about our current zone and our projected zone students, that is different than our projected or proposed enrolled students. And so those numbers are what is forthcoming from DRMP and will impact these budgetary comparisons that we're making. And that's why you don't see the total amounts. But please know that we have been meeting and looking at the data on the back end in preparation for that data when it is given to us. So school capacity, I talked a little bit about the portables. Currently, across our schools, we know that we are spending $835,140 on portables, whether that's annual or monthly payments towards leases. We know that of those portables, we have 324 across our schools throughout the district. 216 of those portables are owned, which is 2/3 of them, and another third of the portables are actually being leased. We're looking at that. I think we have an additional 33 portables in the district that are at non-school sites. And then we also know that we have 118 total wired labs And I believe right now all of our middle schools have one-to-ones, and we have some additional one-to-ones that were just completed in the last week. Our magnet programs, the cost savings would be related to potentially transportation, again, looking more so not necessarily at the overall cost of a student within a school, but more or less looking at what the enrollment is across schools for our magnet programs. And as been suggested in previous community input sessions, whether additional magnet programs need to be placed at other school sites. So as we've walked through this process, we started out with a data set, and it's really important to try and provide clarity that our first data set was based on information that we received in February of 2023. And so as we move forward in this 23-24 school year where we are currently, we went through our 10 days, the first 10 days of school, our looking at our FTE, where students are enrolled, and had our solid enrollment. At that point in time, we provided another data file to DRMP, the agency that we're working with, and now the data that you are seeing in maps is based upon data that was received on August 23rd, 23. So the previous, or the first set of data that you looked at was from February 23, which was from last school year, and what we're looking at now came from August. When we have discussions as we move forward about our zone public schools, we will be talking about those minus our charter and our private schools. So when you're looking at numbers, those numbers are not inclusive of students who may be attending charter or private schools or having vouchers going elsewhere. They will only be for those students within a given zone that are currently attending a public school in Alachua County. As we move forward, we took that data that we received, we looked at our current and proposed zones for students who are attending public schools right now in our county, and then we asked for demographic data for those students. And so we received the information on race, economically disadvantaged, which comes from free and reduced lunch, codes that we provided, and then also students with disabilities that is not inclusive of students who are gifted. However, and I have to give Ms. Rockwell, Dr. Rockwell, her credit. She asked this question, and so I'm always reminded to make sure I say it. If a student is categorized twice, for instance, they have a disability, but they're also gifted, we will still include, of course, the student, even though they have that gifted status. We don't remove all students if they have two criteria or factors related. What will be coming next, where you don't see the area in data set 4, are those students who are currently enrolled and who have proposed student enrollment with the demographics, but it will be the subsets of what you see in the zoned areas. This will be the data that will show us where we are taking kids from specifically in that zoned area and moving them from school X to school Y. So I would be able to, upon this data set, look and say at Newberry High School, we took X number of students and said that they are moving, I'll say to Hawthorne, because you guys know that's not happening, okay? And so say that we were saying that students would go to Hawthorne Middle High School, it would say how many, and then we would have the demographic data for this, for the number who went to Hawthorne, but then also for the number who might go to GHS and the number that might go to Santa Fe. This next sheet, it is our current school enrollment. You'll also see that it is not alphabetized because it is currently listed by school number. And so if you're thinking the school is missing, it is actually outlined by school number. But what you'll see here for each of the schools is that we have our current capacity and enrollment, and that's what's giving us our percent of our current enrollment. And so any schools that are over 100% would be those that we consider over capacity. This list starts out with Parker as the first school, so over capacity at 103% of the current enrollment. Littlewood is at 122%. Newberry High School is at 112%. Buchholz is at 123. Fort Clark at 102. Wiles at 114. Meadowbrook 116. And Newberry Elementary School at 136%, which is the largest for overcapacity in our school district. It is also important to note that we took into account that in the 25-26 school year, Terwilliger will have completed its new construction, and students will be brought back and they will have additional seats. And we realize, of course, that Westwood is going to be going back to their brick and mortar building in 24-25. We have accounted for students who are in dual enrollment programs, so students who may be taking classes at Santa Fe and may be in the high school. We are taking that into account, and they may be counted in this number because although they go to Santa Fe College, if they have a class here at Newberry, they will be still counted within the Newberry High School number. And the total enrollment, we also would find that there are some students who might look as though they are in middle school. For instance, a student who may be at Lincoln Middle School taking a course at Eastside High School might show a class for high school, and that's because they're taking a high school course on that campus. So what we'll look at now is some of the sample data, and each time that we are having our community engagement sessions, we try to use samples that are close to the areas which we're working or impact parents who may be present. And so this sample is for Newberry Elementary School. You don't have a copy of it. This is, though, we wanted to show it because this is kind of how DRMP works through some of their process in terms of data that they provide for us. So you can see here that in the first column on the left is existing Newberry Elementary zone lines. This is students who are currently attending public schools. We do have numbers for students who are attending charter or private schools, but because within our zone lines, we're only looking at those students who are currently attending school, this is what we have in our data set. And so you can tell here that at Newberry Elementary School, for those who are zoned and attending public school, it is 580 students. But then there are additional students outlined underneath. These students are zoned for Newberry Elementary School, but they are attending another school. Thereby, Archer Elementary has 10 students who are zoned for Newberry but attending Archer. Terwilliger has 8 students that are zoned for Newberry but attending their school. There are 4 students zoned for Newberry but going to Hidden Oak. So that brings us down to the green line on the bottom. That is 618 kids that are actually zoned for Newberry. So we take into account that there's this number of students who are zoned, but here are where they're really attending schools, and there can be multiple factors for that. On the column to the right is proposed zone lines. So it's the same process, but now we're looking at based off of the shift with lines. Now here is what we can see in terms of students who would be zoned for Newberry Elementary School in the 24-25 school year and the total. So that 618 drops to 497. 473 of those students would be Newberry Elementary School students. 9 if all information remained kind of stable. We have to provide rules for DRMP. We would propose that 9 kids are likely to go to Archer Elementary, 4 to Terwilliger, so on and so forth. And so those are the comparisons that we make for each school. So you can see again, 618 changes to 497. And by the way, this data is as of today. We did the same for Oakview Middle School. You'll see that Oakview had 761 and shifts to 636. And Newberry Elementary for the actual 5th graders that are at Oakview would move from 122 to 93. High Springs Community School, 297 students are currently in the existing High Springs zones line. We have a few students going to Oakview, Mabane, Howard Bishop, Westwood, and Kanapaha, brings that total to 313. The proposed, however, is to shift to 281 students with proposed zone lines. Existing for Newberry High School, currently there are 820 students who are currently zoned in our current zone line, zoned for Newberry High School. 632 of those 820 students currently attending Newberry High School. 74 are at Buchholz, 49 are at GHS, 42 at Santa Fe, 22 at Eastside, and 1 at Hawthorne. The proposed zone lines change that projection and move it from 820 students total to 697 in the proposed zone lines. So the next piece of information that you all have should be a stapled sheet. And on the one side where it says currently attending a zone public school, shows the information that I just shared, but now you can see the percentages and a breakdown as the percent of, the school capacity, the number of zone students, and that capacity for that school, which is the number of zone students divided by the capacity. After that, you will see the percentages of economically disadvantaged, again, by the codes that were provided for free and reduced lunch. Our 23-24 school year data for students currently attending this year, and you can see it broken down by race, our magnet programs, choice, those things because of our zoning and district programs, and zoning exemptions. And then the same thing is done for students who are proposed to be in our school district within the zone lines, attending a public school in Alachua County for the 24-25 school year. You'll also note that I highlighted in yellow the schools that are over capacity. So if we go back to current, these are the number of schools that are over capacity. You'll see that when we go to proposed, it still shows students that are over capacity. What you'll find if you look at that for the most part is the capacity that's over 100% is less than it was on the current, but also the proposed amount is not the actual amount. So we have to be very careful that when we look at this, we're looking at these are students who could attend schools across the board based on being within zone lines. But the rules that the district has to provide to DRMP in the next set of data we get will have more actual numbers based on student enrollment and proposed student enrollment. And so thereby the rules that we share with you would be really important so that you can understand how we came up with those projections. And so finally, the rationale for considerations for rezoning. I've already talked about the data that we've moved from February to what happened in August 2023. The company and agency that we're working with, the representatives, are using a process called geocoding. So they are layering the address information that we have with the 911 addresses for the students who are in our district to create the points on the map. So they can see pinpoints of every single child that we have an address code for and a 911 address on a map to help make these determinations. It's been very interesting to watch through that process because it's very time consuming but very precise in how they're pulling the addresses for students. We have some charter and private school assumptions that we have to think about. As we move forward, we have to always keep in mind that although, say for instance, Newberry High School had 1,000 students attending, and of those 1,000, they had 1,000 students who were zoned for them, but of the 1,000 students, 200 of those kids have been going to charter and private schools for the last 3 years. And so it would be an assumption that in the 24-25 school year, those 200 students would not be coming to Newberry High School. The reality, however, is they could if they wanted to, because they have the right as students zoned to the school to come here, and so we have to keep the consideration of those who are attending charter and private schools. What we don't have in the data sets that you have is Sidney Lanier and Aquin Jones or Lofton, because those students do not have a zoned area to attend those schools they are assigned or apply. There are a couple of outliers. It is very small, but there's a small number of students who did not have race information attached to their record. And so if you're one of those people who's digging really deep into data and you're saying these numbers are not adding up, we wanted to make sure that we were very clear in sharing that there are a couple of kids who are out there who didn't have that on their records, and that's why the numbers will not equal out. Also, there are some students, and I mentioned this already, who may be in one grade level but attending school at another grade level. We have taken into account our ESE students and provided values for the fields for that. I've explained that, as well as our economically disadvantaged and the lunch status codes. And then our program exception codes. We have to look at our students who are likely to not attend a school in a future year based on what type of exemption they actually receive. So you'll see reason codes on the bottom, our choice and opportunity scholarships, district programs like Character Counts that address a lot of behavioral things for students. District programs that we have could be a functional program for students with disabilities. We have ESOL programs at Parker, Westwood, and GHS. Our magnet programs and how, students who are in the magnet program who may remain at a school because they're in that magnet have to be considered, as well as the zoning exemptions that we give for various reasons. We then supply DRMP with the information as to what do we do year to year to say whether students will remain current or move in order for them to look at what will happen in our projections. So our new zoning lines accomplish a couple of things, or have thus far, and that is that the lines have shifted toward the east thus far. They have been purposely moved to the east because that is where the space actually exists in our county. And so those zone lines have been moved to where there is less populated zones. The second thing that we wanted to make sure that we highlighted was that we have parcel boundaries. In our former maps, some of those parcel lines did not line up as they should have. They had some errors, and so there are corrections that were made, but they do not impact the student enrollment. They more or less just clean up the maps. And so we just wanted to make sure that that was clear. And then implications for district practices and procedures. As I've mentioned, we've gone through this process and we've been looking at, our zone schools, the exceptions, choice, and we realized that there are a lot of things that we need to consider in our rezoning process in terms of the procedures that we follow as a district. What are our caps and magnet programs? What numbers of students are we admitting each year? What happens when students who go to magnet programs are at a school? So for instance, I'm here at Newberry High School in a magnet program. In my 10th grade year, I decide that I'm going to drop out of the magnet program, but I don't go back to my zone school. And so where is it that we are following that information and making sure that we're following a process that the seats that are open to students are appropriate and that the rules that have been established are being followed? So this has just revealed we probably wouldn't have looked at hardwire one-to-one had it not been for comprehensive rezoning and how that could impact kids coming back in. And so these things have really come from the actual data and conversations of the various departments in our district and staff who have been working on this. I mentioned the revitalization facilities, Littlewood and Westwood earlier, but also we are taking into account the expansion of the voucher programs, charters, home, private, virtual schools, new schools that are coming online by the state, all these great things that are happening for different kids for different reasons. We have to take into account the options that parents have. This is where our community input sessions are as we move forward. So our next one after today will be at GHS and then Santa Fe, but I turn it back over to Jackie Johnson and the board.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards. All right, now we are ready to turn things over to you. As I said, once I get back to my spot where I can run the timer, if you would like to speak to the board, if you'll go ahead and start lining up at the microphone, and then once I'm back in place, we can get started and have the board hear what you have to say.
Good evening. My name is Christian Smith. I've spoken with you on multiple occasions. Tonight, I'm specifically here to ask you to consider that Newberry and your rural communities are not as straight line carved up. There we go. I have light, so can we? Thanks. It looks like it's on. Yeah, I'm here. So. I'm Thanks. There we go. Again, Smith, and I've multiple occasions talk about the difficulties in rezoning opposed to drawing boundaries within a city line where you can follow the maps or curves pretty easily. Maps as they're proposed specifically for boundaries on the westernmost side. They literally draw a straight line irrespective of roads as they travel, cutting heritage property, cutting neighborhoods in half. So one half of the neighborhood goes to NES, one half of the neighborhood goes to Alachua. And I can tell you that that line is drawn on the western portion between 32nd and 170th. Actually, it's between 202nd and 170th. I'd propose it follow the road between 32nd and 170th. Those are Newberry families. I literally just, my kids at Easton have 4 children who have gone to schools. If you draw the line now, you're going to send people who have grown up in Newberry, who play Newberry, whose friends are in Newberry, and you're going to send half of them to Alachua and half of them to Newberry, but their community is still here. Everything they do is still here. So I'd ask that you look at how those lines are drawn and that you consider following the road to complete the angles that are there rather than just draw a straight arbitrary line down. It makes the population manipulation is minimal there because most of that property is preserved or reserved or farm. That's tree growth, old growth. It's not going anywhere. We're not adding a lot of students to the zones by shifting west just a little bit to 170th. So I'd ask. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Lisa Epps. We live at the bottom of Newberry, just basically on the Levy County line. And like he was saying with the rural communities, these kids are not these numbers on these, the way where they're at. My grandson only has 2 years left in elementary school, and he already has roots where he's at. He is with the people he goes to school with. This is going to be very hard on the kids. And my grandson's also a very good student also. And ripping him out of his school and putting him somewhere else when he only has a few more years till middle school, I think is going to be very hard on a lot of kids. And I would like you to consider that. I'm from Broward County. We moved here. We used to live in rural Broward County, and we went. And they. Another thing Broward County did was development to finance part of these new school buildings. Since they were making so much money off of bringing in these new homes, they were also making them partake in that also. So at least I would ask you to, at least these kids that have these roots in these schools already and already have their friends. My grandson knows all of the teachers in school already, and to go to a different school now is going to hurt him a lot, and I'm sure a lot of parents are in the same situation. Thank you.
My name is Kelly Campbell, and I have 2 children attending Littlewood, and one of recognize the difficult agenda of trying to please everyone with the comprehensive rezoning. I recognize the sentiments that we are doing this together as a community. Some of us, unfortunately, have become lost in the shifting numbers and will lose our community within our schools. Some of the 9% of ACPS I might be short.
I don't want to mess it up.
Some of the 9% of ACPS students impacted by comprehensive rezoning are being moved without even a small fraction of their peers from their previous zone school. Glen Springs, for example, is losing a mere 12 students to Norton. A rezoned child from Glen Springs will be lucky if they are moved with a classmate from their grade, let alone one of their friends. And there are numerous such slivers of neighborhoods across the country that are being shaved, county, that are being shaved from one school to another. This may look great on paper as you crunch the numbers, but have you considered how you are isolating some of these children from their peers? We are not moving enough children in some of these zones to not have clauses in place for them to continue attending their previous zone. Moving to a new school has well-documented negative impacts on children. Sometimes these impacts will be temporary and moving can be beneficial. These negative impacts, however, can sometimes last years and through adulthood, especially for some children with special needs. As a child, I moved elementary schools 3 times, and it was anxiety-provoking each time. I did not have the friendship base I saw with other children, and each time it was harder to make new friends. I have strived to provide stability for my children so they would not have to experience what I went through. Although with today's updated maps, my Littlewood children are now getting rezoned with more peers, many students still fall within small neighborhoods getting rezoned. To prevent such a disruption to families that may not be able to tolerate the change, school districts across the nation implement clauses to allow children and their siblings exemptions to remain within their old districts until they matriculate out of that school without busing in most cases. With such exemptions, enrollment numbers quickly shift according to the new boundary lines, but without the emotional strain on families. I imagine many parents in this district would choose this option, but many parents would also choose their new school zones that guarantee busing. The only clause we currently have is to allow rising 5th, 8th, and 12th graders and magnet students to remain at their old zone schools. Please consider doing what so many districts across the country have done and expand this clause to include all grade levels, with the exception where students are being moved from one school to another with at least 15% of their peers. If this policy were adopted, the district would still achieve its goal of reducing enrollment in crowded schools, increasing enrollment in underutilized schools, increasing busing efficiency, but would also eliminate the harmful impacts of isolating students from their established school communities. As an added bonus, you may retain more families and therefore more money within the school district and would otherwise leave to charter or private schools without such a clause. Thank you for your hard work in trying to find solutions. I hope you will consider my proposal.
Good evening, board members. Jordan Marlowe. First, thank you all for making the trip out here. It's unfortunate our chair couldn't be here because I'm not entirely sure, but I think the 3 schools in the city of Newberry probably collectively have the most overcrowded issues combined together. So we're sitting in ground zero, right? I also want to say how much I appreciate you taking input and continuing to tweak these maps. This next round of maps are better than the first round of maps, and I'm hoping that we can continue that process. And that's what we're here to do tonight. As I said before, I don't even begin to pretend to understand that I know all of the different calculations that you guys have to take into this. In the city of Newberry, we get the luxury of having one principle. We are one community, and we want to stick together. We want to stay together. We're willing to suffer together as we continue to argue and lobby for a greater sense of urgency for our fair share of the half-cent tax and capital improvement plans to bring more classrooms, to bring more space out here to our community. I've tried to keep a very clear and consistent message on behalf of my residents. We have asked you guys to take a razor scalpel. Let's cut out about 2-3 tenths of a mile right west of 143rd, where the density of Jonesville is not the city of Newberry. I know that a lot of folks there think they're Newberry, but Jonesville is not the city of Newberry. That's where the density is. I hear the board members and county commission frequently talk about Newberry's growth rate. Alachua County governs Jonesville, and Jonesville grows, they approve about 4 times the number of houses in a given year than the city of Newberry does. So the maps that you have right now, I don't believe are really going to end up in the long run helping. We just need to take that little bit of density of Jonesville, and we need to send that to all the different options that you have north, south, east, west. Newberry wants to stay together. We're asking that you not cut into our municipal lines. We are one community. I'm going to throw Archer in there too, because Archer and Newberry got a long-standing relationship, and we are sister cities. We play sports together. We raise our kids together. We understand that Archer is going to come to Newberry. It's been that way for a long time, and we're fine with keeping it that way. I also want to put in a plug that if you live right outside of Newberry, if you're an unincorporated, and I don't think we're really talking about a lot of folks here, but we got a lot of 5-acre ranchettes. These are some of our parents that populate our PTAs. They coach our kids. They donate to our schools. They should not be left out of it. All Newberry is asking is that we just take that little bit of Jonesville that Alachua County is approving houses after houses in. Let's take them and redisperse them. Let the rest of Newberry stay the same, and remember us when it comes to the half-cent sales tax. We can't wait till 2030. We can't wait till 2031. Newberry Elementary School needs buildings. They need them now. We need them this summer, and that's what needs to be the priority. 136% capacity with 5th grade at Oakview. That's what we need to be talking about. That's what I'd like to hear from you guys. Again, thank you for coming. And after, if you want to take a walk on our asphalt track, I'll be glad to take you down that asphalt track anytime it wants to.
Have on the appropriate shoes. I'm a little bit shorter. Good evening. My name is Diane Gady. I am a mother of a student at Childs Elementary and a physician caring for patients across our county. Thank you for your work on this issue and the opportunity to speak. I am here tonight to express concern regarding the proposed zone changes for Childs Elementary. As the board is aware, Childs' current zone is significantly impacted by the proposed zones, and specifically, the shift of Childs' zone away from the west is a pretty significant shift. This shift is due to the creation of Terwilliger's proposed new zone, and Childs, which is of course understandable. Childs is currently running greater than 90% capacity. However, it is not greater than the 100% that several neighboring schools are challenged with. Wiles is a specific example, but there are plenty of others. The northern proposed zone for Childs surprisingly has moved south. And this movement does create barriers to some families who now must drive past Childs to get to Terwilliger. And it actually removes the opportunity for several families to bike to school with their children. I'm referencing the area south of 8th Ave and specifically east of 91st Ave. This doesn't make much sense to me when I look at that map, and I wanted to raise it to the board's attention. I'm also very concerned about the worsening of diversity, specifically socioeconomic diversity in the new zones. The Terwilliger zone proposed for 2024-2025 has the lowest percentage of economically disadvantaged students in the entire county, and it sits at the chart at 22%. That's a large difference compared to across the schools across the county. This feels like much of the same to me in terms of allowing ongoing unequal distribution of students who have economic advantages. There's a similar pattern here as it relates to ethnic demographic data as well. This is, when I look at the charts, it seems to be at its worst in Terwilliger's proposed zone. And so I really encourage the board to take a close look at that proposed zone, to acknowledge its impact on the surrounding schools and identify opportunities to reduce these challenges and disparity. I think that we can do a little bit better here, and I want to thank you for revising your maps and continuing to work towards improvement. I think that that's really an important part to the process, so thank you all. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Aisha Yarn. I'm actually one of the deans here at Newberry High School. I live in Gainesville, and I have a student who is in the Magnet IB program at Eastside. So I represent quite a few different interests. But first and foremost, looking at this just from a pure common sense perspective, it just doesn't seem like it goes far enough. I know we are in the working stages and it's a work in progress, but when I look at Newberry High School and the fact that right now we sit at roughly 60 students over capacity. To some it may not sound like much, but as a dean here I can tell you it's a whole lot. When the hallways are overcrowded, girls can't get into the bathrooms. It impacts behavior in the classroom. So I think that's something that has to be a part of the conversation, and I haven't heard much of the discussion about that, especially when I look at the factors. But in terms of the growth projection rate, you said that you're looking at the new development in the area. We know, what is that boom rate for new housing in this area? It clearly is exploding right now. I mean, this is like the best kept secret, and it doesn't feel like as much of a secret anymore, but everybody wants to come to Newberry. With that being said, I don't know how that's not truly being taken into consideration, or how much perhaps, since it's not listed as a specific factor, because if the growth projection rate is higher in Newberry than, let's say, it is in other parts of the county, then why aren't we going a little bit further? Because we're still going to be over capacity at 104%. My question, is just really basic, though. When is the next rezoning? Because we're going to do this, still be over capacity. Newberry is steadily growing, and we still haven't gone far enough. It just seems a little redundant. If you want to put in the work, let's put in the work. And I think you have to consider things about that lateral mobility, families moving from one side of the town to the other side of town, those transitions, this mass exodus to the west. Not to mention, we do need improved verification of addresses. That's also a part of the problem. So that way you have looked at a variety of factors, and you're really looking at some of the root causes, and that's just what I'm not hearing. And that's, as a parent and also as a dean, I would like for you to maybe consider some more of what you have as external factors that are really causing some internal problems. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tony Ankers, and we have two children in Newberry Elementary School. One will be in 5th grade next year, so he'll be at the middle school. The other will be in 3rd grade next year. So we'll be split in the morning. We'll have to, as of right now, we're part of the rural community. You guys, with the new shift of the map, you just cut us out by a little bit. So we would have to take our daughter all the way down to Archer and then cut back up to bring our son to his school in the morning and in the afternoon. We ask that you could possibly, there's only a couple of children that live on our road that are at the elementary school. In the same situation too, there's a little girl and her sister, and then a little boy and his little brothers that go to the same grades as our children do. And if you could just move this southern line just a little bit further down, almost to the end where Watermelon Pond starts, that would greatly, there's only a couple children down here, so by shifting that line up to 46th, you really didn't cut out that many kids, make that much of a difference when it comes to numbers. We moved to Newberry just to go to these schools for our children, and it would be really tough, especially after COVID, moving our children to another school now that they've established, especially for our daughter, friends, teachers. My wife and myself volunteer with the school for the past 4 years, and it would change things if we had to actually remove them from their school to a new school. And we just wish that you would reconsider where that southern boundary really is. And that's really about it. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Tim Martin. I'm one of the city commissioners here in Newberry. It was occurring to me while that gentleman was speaking whether or not there's any capacity to take some of these lines and then rather than having them as a hard, fast rule, maybe potentially in the rural areas, it might help empower you guys to be a little bit more generous on the line and maybe entertain people within sort of an exception zone along those, maybe a mile from the line that you've got actually hard and fast on the map. And maybe as you get closer into town, maybe that fudge factor, so to speak, kind of can move a little bit and help sort of accommodate some of these exceptions. So that was one comment. And one question would be whether or not there is even any entertaining being done right now for potential exceptions, and if you have an opportunity to kind of let us know if there is anything even being entertained at this point. Thank you.
Madam Vice Chair Armando Grundy Gomez, a couple things I wanted to look at in looking at a lot of how they're drawn is, number one is some of the boundaries in the zones, not very compact and contiguous, and it almost gives the old thought of looking at an old congressional district by one former Congresswoman Corrine Brown in one of the districts that you have, in looking at how some of the high school districts are drawn. Specifically, I want to look to our east. I know we're out here talking about Newberry, but they're not compact and contiguous, and some of them geographically and then proportionally we want to look at when it comes to balance of population and proportion and demographics. I look at how are we going to measure our Hawthorne population with our east side population. That's one. But I think it's also going to come down to looking at how well the data is. And so far from what I'm seeing from staff, there's still a lot left to be desired. And it is going to be apparent if you want to do a district-wide rezoning. I want to applaud you all for coming here, but it's going to be imperative that transparency and sunshine are going to be to the utmost importance, and really, truly have a robust district-wide community engagement. That may take you a year. Some people say we can't wait a year. Well, there's a lot of things. Population is still going to increase. We know population is moving west and there's a shift, but it is imperative of us to get it right once. We only want to usually try to cut once and not twice. We want to get this right, and you don't want to rush this. You want to make sure you're having data, and that means every member on the board should have the same information from staff, not piecemeal, not partly, but the information that you have needs to be full of sunshine, full of transparency, not piecemeal. And some of this still looks like I'm looking for data that I'm looking for and still see some questions like, where is this and where is that? And I'm not going to do that because I don't want to put folks out there, but I'm just concerned about the raw data and lack of what's missing. And I've said that to you all in meetings. The next thing I want to talk about is I am for charter schools and want to have more charter schools. More charter schools are going to be important because there are folks that are left out with charter schools that are seeming to learn better, especially for populations that look like me or in demographics. And if that means that children are going to learn better by having, because our public schools are failing, which they clearly are, based on literacy rates and other demographics, and what is being taught, then that's a problem. So we need to have more charter schools. Thank you.
Good evening, guys. I appreciate y'all coming out to Newberry. I hope you enjoy your time out here. I specifically want to talk about, Jess Odom. I specifically want to talk about the northeast, what is currently towards the Alachua schools. I, myself, I am sixth generation, went through all this. However, I went to Newberry to put my kids in Newberry school. I did. In fact, at Newberry Elementary, I sit on the school advisory council currently and have for the past 3 years. primarily farmland. It's a lot of rural property. There's like Mayor Marlowe mentioned, that density zone in Jonesville is the main culprit that we need to be worrying about. I just feel like we should really think about shifting that line, or would like to implore y'all to think about shifting that line at least over to 170th, and kind of keep that core group of what is Newberry residents back to these Newberry schools. And like I said, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Will you take me, because I'm a little further east than that. I'm off of 162nd, in that, like he's saying, that east block. I'm sorry, I'm Ginger. We have at the high school daycare, kindergarten. I literally can't fathom having to put my house up for sale so that I can keep my kids where they've been going to school. But I will. And that may throw your dad off a little bit, but to look at that area. I know there's a huge density in some of the apartment complexes right there in the Jonesville area, but the more rural areas, maybe consider not making us drive 14 miles the opposite direction, or them driving 14 miles the opposite direction to go to school. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I've been active in this community for over 10 years, and it's like I'm being removed.
I was just going to second everything that Jeff said and that she said.
Come get it on record.
Okay. I'll come.
Come get it on record.
Hi, my name is Lauren. I have a child at Newberry Elementary, Halverson, a child at Newberry Elementary, and a child at Oakview, in 5th grade at Oakview, which has been an experience, not a bad one, actually. I wanted to speak on the square that is also being sent to Alachua. We do not have north roadways that go to Alachua from that square. We have to go all the way around all the farmland. So again, with Jess's point, that we are all living on acreage, we are not developments, and we are Newberry. So to send us to Alachua, the other day it was a 36-minute drive on my GPS. It currently takes me 11 minutes with school zones to get to Newberry Elementary. So this does not make any sense. I don't know how it's going to work with transportation. We currently don't take the bus now because we're so close to school, which I think is to a benefit for the transportation department. And I don't see how you're going to expect these children to move school up to Alachua and then come back to Newberry for church, sports, after-school care, and all the things that we do in Newberry. So that's my 2 cents on that block. I think the shift closer to 143rd Street makes sense. But to Mayor Marlowe's point, that the neighborhoods down the roadway of 143rd are very populated and growing, but we're just not in this rural area. So please shift the line back. It is currently going, so it's not.
My name is Steve Donahue. I just wanted to say, I think no matter where you zone, people are going to be upset, and I get that. I think rather than limiting capacity at some of the magnet programs, some of the popular programs you have, the finance program at Buchholz, my son's in that, it's very popular. Maybe put that at a similar program at a school that you want the capacity to go to. You've heard parents will sell their houses and move into the zone they want. They're going to lie and say they live in a zone they don't. But if you start a program in a school you want those parents at, they'll get there, rather than fighting everybody and trying to force them to go to the school you want them. Put an incentive there and make them want to go to that school. I have 5 kids. I've had 5 kids in 5 different schools because I'm trying to put each kid in the program best for them. And I think the magnets have been a great opportunity. I have a son on the autism spectrum. He's in the robotics program at Lofton. It's the only thing keeping him in school. He hates school. He doesn't like the socialization. He loves robots. He's now, this year, the teacher said he's talking in class. He's talking to kids. And it's because in robotics, he has to work with the team and build his robot and do competitions. And it's been tremendous. And I think limiting those programs for people would be a bad mistake. So I'd say replicate the really popular programs in schools you want the parents to go to, and they'll go. If you don't have capacity at Buholtz in the finance program, start a finance program in a school you want people to go to. And I think the parents that can't get into Buholtz, they'll consider that as an option and maybe send their kids to that school. So I think limiting the magnet programs would be a mistake. Maybe replicate your successes and learn from that. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Hi, thank you for coming. My name is Martha Kaysen, and I have been a member of this community ever since I was little and went to school at all of these 3 schools. I just wanted to reiterate that we are a community. We stick together. We stick together, whether it's mine or anybody else's kids. We all do that for each other. It's important, and we are looking at them to make sure we can stay together. We need money. All the money keeps going to all the other schools, all the other places. We do building that things that
We're going to ask everybody to just go ahead and complete that survey again, so we can, if you want to check it on your phones.
We will very quickly run through the questions. You can do it at your own pace or you can follow along. Again, you can either go to menti.com and enter that code, or you can scan that QR code. So our first question is, who are you? Again, this is a completely anonymous survey. It doesn't record your phone, your name, your email, your anything. Completely anonymous. Can't track anything. So please be honest. Are you a parent or guardian of an ACPS student? Non-charter, that would be public school. And are you an ACPS employee? You can obviously be both of those things at once. For this one, it discusses that school board policy on zoning. We'd like for you to rank which are the most important to you, first through fifth. Those are the effective instructional programs, safe and efficient student transportation. It's all transportation things. Making sure that the enrollment and capacity numbers line up so we have no overcapacity schools, the financial cost of running the district, and those demographic or socioeconomic data points, and making sure those balance out. If you could rank those in order of importance. Our next question is, what is your top question about rezoning? You get, I believe, 200 characters. So what are your top 200 characters that are questioning about rezoning? If you can fit 2 in there, feel free. Our next question is, what would be your top suggestion for rezoning? So this would be a non-question related one. What is your top suggestion? Again, 200 characters of suggestion. Our next question is, where is most of your information about rezoning coming from? Is it coming from district communications? That'd be text message, email, phone call, the district Facebook, a Newberry PTA Facebook, the website, flyer going home, anything from the district, or is it coming from outside the district? And then if you could give us a general idea, this one's hard because it's hard to zoom in on the screen. Where in the district do you live? Put a general area.
Wonderful. Thank you all very much for helping us with that. We've had staff here taking notes, board members taking notes, so we are certainly taking into account everything that we are hearing from people at these community input sessions. Again, the rezoning website has a whole lot of information, and we are constantly updating that, so please use that as a resource. Otherwise, thank you very much for coming, and have a safe trip home.